Hello, how are you today? I'm here today to talk to you about how to be a successful writer. What does that even mean? My name is Steve Kidd. I'm a third generation minister, an international best-selling author of now 22 books and counting. I've got about six more I'm working on right now. But more than that are the 4,000 plus people that I've helped them write, publish, market their books to bestseller, or that have used the system that I've created to become best-selling authors. You see, what I really love to do is I love helping people share their life changing, life giving message to the world and help people up level themselves by taking themselves to that next level. Often, life can be tough, it can seem impossible. And what I'm here today to tell you is there is a next level, there is better, and that often what feels like a cloud doesn't just have a silver lining, it's actually silver with cotton candy on top of it. Today, let's see if we can help you find some silver in your life and up level just a little bit. Many of you know I work almost exclusively with writers. I'm technically a marketing company. I have been since 1987, been in internet space since literally before we called it the internet, way back in the days of bulletin boards, and have been working with book authors and books since 2007. Helped so many people. And the coolest part about that is that those books have now reached literally millions of people with a message that they have, messages of hope and change and information and possibility and fun stories and children's books that make children giggle and learn and laugh. They even include books like My Romeo the Suicidal Parakeet, so much fun. And it was literally just written off of the concept of this crazy parakeet that we had that kept dropping himself on his head. And it was years later, and I still had running around in my head, why is this crazy parakeet? Why did he drop himself on his head? So I put some thoughts in his mouth and wrote a book with it. And actually, look for it. I'm in the process of developing now book two. Romeo's going to come back to us with his suicidal tendencies and talk to us instead of some of the general affairs of the world. This time he's going to talk specifically about calling in sick to work and what it's like from an HR manager's perspective to take all of those calls from people. It's going to give us some suggestions of better ways that we can call into work, or at least the very humorous ways that we can call into work. So, got that and a whole bunch of other cool books that I'm working on. Literally, like I said, there's about six more of them that are somewhere in development right now because I love to write. And that's why I actually asked a friend of mine, and I said, what should I talk about today? And she said, talk about how to be a successful writer. I'm like, all right, how to be a successful writer. What does that even mean? What does a successful writer look like? I remember there's a quote from a movie. It's actually the movie Tootsie, if any of you have ever seen it. It's a funny older movie from, I don't know, what, 1981. Somebody could look it up and post in the comments if you want to. But there's a phrase in there that says, actors act. Actors act always. And the same thing I would tell you is true for writers. Writers write, it just comes out of them. Most of you know what I mean that are already, that are writers, whether you've published a book or not. You've been journaling, you've been writing stories. Even when you're a little kid, you had this wonderful world of imagination that was swimming around. Some of us, myself included, both hands up, some of us tended to have these incredibly amazing stories, and they just swam around in our brains and we never did anything with it. Others have been really great at capturing those and then out and sharing them with the world. Now, way back in the day, let's go back. Let's go way back. Let's have a quick history lesson here. If we were in the mid 1800s, so the early 19th century, mid 1800s, and you're talking about some of the authors like Dickens and others like that, by that point, the printing press was in full swing. So we're talking about, a day and age when books were becoming more and more readily available. We're not talking about like the 1500s when, only the Gutenberg Bible was being printed. We're talking about there were printing companies and there were publishing companies and those kind of things. Back in those days, it was fairly rare to get a contract. You had to do something special. You had to really show them. And they very quickly learned that they could make, and I'm talking to publishing companies, learned that they could make more money if they made their authors write longer books. You see, you can charge more for a book that's 350 pages than you can for a book that's, say, 25 pages. And gone were the days when printing was rare enough that, like some of the Revolutionary War printed materials, that these days we might even call those more like brochures or flyers, but they were books. They were solid, hardcore, really awesome books, though short, because printing ink and think about the concept of every single letter in the entire book had to be typeset, one letter at a time, all spelled backwards. So it made printing a little bit more difficult of a situation back then. By the time we get into the mid 1800s, it's a much more mass-produced kind of a thing. There are newspapers that are putting out relatively large editions of newsprint, and books are being printed on the regular. Not just the Bible. There's lots of other books that are being printed by that point. And so they began to feel their power, and they created what we now often think of as a normal book. And that's when you reach over to your shelf and you grab this 350-pound tome. And the thing about it is that if you got to the point where you got a contract, we slowly raised in the industry to a point where it became very lucrative. Now, I can tell you, people like Dickens and some of those like that, they didn't make a whole lot of money. They were starving artists back in their day. We went through a time period, flashing forward 100 years plus, where in the 70s especially, if you could prove it, and if you had the right credentials, could make a very good living writing and selling books. And, the publishing companies did those kind of things. By the time you're now into 2023, you're looking at a situation where, unless you have a really good following already. I talked to an author's agent, actually, that's a friend of mine. She said that she was at an event, it was some type of trade show, and people were trying to push their books or get signed as contracts and things like that. And the lady literally sat there the whole time on the computer. Each person would come up and talk about who they were, and the lady never engaged with them. And this, this author agent, a friend of mine, she, got a little frustrated with her because, she had invited her to be in her booth to hopefully help some of her clients get writing contracts. And all the lady would do is sit there and type away on the computer, and then after the person walked away, she'd say, yeah, no, or it's a no from us, or no, we'll pass. And it was kind of frustrating. And finally she asked her, she said, how do you know? What are you doing? She goes, very quickly, just by looking them up on social media. If I can't find that they're known well enough that when I type up their name, they're one of the first or the first person that comes up, and when I look at their profile, they can post something randomly on a Tuesday about whatever, and they'll get more than 3,000 likes and comments on that random post. They need that level of following to have it be even worth it for us. And I can tell you, if you've ever written the write up to ask a company to publish your book, a traditional publisher, they want to know what's in it for me. What are you going to do? What are you going to spend? What's your marketing approach? Anybody that's a current, published author will tell you that the companies, bigger, even more so true this is, even if they give you an advance, their idea of them marketing book for you is for you to get a hold of a bunch of places, and you go out and do a book tour, you go out and do book signings, you come up with all the things. We'll make sure the book is edited and formatted and printed and available for the bookstores like Barnes and Noble and places like that to buy it. And of course, obviously, we'll make sure that there's the ability for us to send them to Amazon when people go there and get it. And that's their idea of selling. So how do you be a successful writer when all of that has transpired? When You have an industry that still believes you need to write 350 pages, when in fact, Amazon will tell you that if your book is 100 pages or less, about 60% of the people will read and finish it. If it goes over 100, 101 to 200 pages, is about 20%. And if it goes over 200 pages, it's less than 3% of people that even finish the book. And yet the traditional publisher will tell you, well, no, your book needs to be 350 pages or we won't even consider it. How do you be a successful writer when those kind of things are in mind? How do you be a successful writer when, Hulu and Netflix and Amazon Prime and Disney Plus and Peacock and Paramount and, the list just goes on and on and on and on, infinitum of all the streaming services plus cable television or satellite or whatever you've got. There are a lot of distractions. So how do you be a successful writer? And by successful writer, like I wrote in the description, how do you get somebody to show me the money? Remember that from Jerry McGuire, show me the money, right? Say it louder, Jerry, show me the money. And a lot of us as writers, we feel like we want to scream that out into the world too. So let's talk in some specifics. I've kind of talked around it. Let's dive into it. The concept of being a successful writer, first of all, has to do with defining what your definition of success is. All too often, we put a dollar figure on that definition of success, and that is most likely not the best way of really defining your success these days. I did an interview. You can go and look at Thriving Entrepreneur and see the interview I did with Noah St. John. And he talked about how his 22nd book and all the money he's made from his books and all of the years he's been writing books. And currently their marketing program for their book is they give the ebook away for free. You go to their site, you sign up, you give them your email address, and they give the book away to you for free. And then they immediately turn around and they prompt you, we could give you this, we could upgrade you to the print version of this book. And all we'll charge you for that is the cost of shipping. And most people that are doing that, they're going to charge around $7 or so, $7-8. And then they'll immediately prompt you after that and say, if you liked the book, you should take this course that I've created from the book. And then the course is $100 or $200 or $1,000. And then immediately from that, they're like, and they just keep going. Noah St. John has a $100,000 program. It's not uncommon for him to charge $10,000 or $15,000 in 1 month to a client. And yet still, from the basis of his 22nd book, that is his thinking on the actual money he's going to make from the book. And the truth of the matter is, depending on the method you publish for the book, if you're selling it through Amazon, you're probably going to make somewhere around $2, maybe $3 typically off of the book. Could be more, could be less, but that's a good average place to be. If you're selling it directly and you're selling it at a retail price, meaning $15.99, $19.99, that kind of thing, you could make as much as even 10 or so dollars off of that. By the time you equate in the shipping you paid and the wholesale price you paid to get the book there, and I'm not even talking about any kind of storage fee for if you buy a giant box of books and you're storing it. But so that's kind of some of the right and left sidelines. So whether you're talking about $1 or you're talking about $10, to get to $10,000, $1 at a time, that's 10,000 sales. To get to $10,000, $10 at a time, still 1,000 sales. But guess what? If you sell a course for $1,000, you only have to have 10 of those. That seems like a lot easier of a number to do in a month. And let's be honest, $10,000 a month, if you were making that would be a great income. Most of us have been at a place or are at a place where if it was $1,000 a month, if it was $2,000 a month, I'd have to do the exact math on it, but net income, it's usually for a lot of people not that uncommon to have their income be somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000 a month, depending on where they are and what level they're at. Now of course, obviously, C-suite executives, they make 6, sometimes even 7-figure amounts, and that's going to be a whole different conversation. But I'm assuming that, we're not talking about how do you replace your C-suite. That would be a totally different conversation. Go to AskSteveKid.com and, you know, let's talk about how we can make that happen too. It's a totally different methodology. And I'm trying to stay as streamlined as my poor little brain will let me on a Saturday when it's 101, 102 degrees outside. Um, and I apologize for the blowing fan in behind me, but I'm not turning the air conditioner off because it'll get real hot in here real quick, and then this will be really interesting. Um, Seeing me pass out on camera, that would be a lot of fun for all of us, right? So again, we need to figure out what success really means. Okay, now there's the other side of success, and there's that part of why did you write your book? So you could be a successful writer and never make a dime because maybe you intentionally want 100, 1,000, 100,000, 10 million people to just have your book. I was talking to a person just earlier today, and they said their number one thing was they wanted to create a transformation in especially they were talking specifically about teachers. And I said to them, I said, when we start thinking about that, we then start thinking about, the money we're going to make from a course or the additional things that we can follow up the book with. But the book may become a lost leader. It may be something that we literally give away for free. Now, there's all kinds of nuances to that, and we'd have to go into a whole marketing session to talk about when is free good and when is free just, it's worth about as much time as it takes for the person to throw it away. And there's definitely something to be said for just a little bit of money makes a huge amount of difference. But that, again, has to do with the marketing strategy. What does success for this book mean? So first we have to define what that is. And then next we have to be real about, both time and possibility. Now, if you're in a position where you're desperate, where you're like not sure you're going to keep the lights on of your house if you don't sell the next copy of your book, and for most of you, let's just say your electric bill is $100, which would be pretty low a lot of places. That means at $1 a time you need to sell 100 books. And if your electricity is going to get shut off tomorrow, either A, you need to be calling on the phone like a crazy person, finding a bookstore, a library, a university, a school, it depends on the niche for your book, that will buy copies of your book and sell them 5 at a time, 10 at a time, 100 at a time to get that $100. That's talking about urgent, immediate money. And that's not really success, that's survival. When we talk about success, it's about having a system. And so again, going back to Noah St. John's system, Noah talks about the whole concept. And I heard from another person, they were talking the same system. And they said, I have, I give away the book for free, and about 20% of those people, they go on, and I should have started at the top of the funnel. They go on to a podcast, speak for free. They don't charge anything for being there. The person doesn't, in many cases, charge them to be on that particular podcast. They go on the podcast, they give their book for free. And then about 20% of those people upgrade to the print book, and about 20% of the people that upgrade to the print book buy their course. The course is like $1,000. So poof, there you go. So if you've got, we'd have to do the math on it, but let's just use 100. If you have 20% of the 100 people that get the ebook get the print book, and if 20% of those 20 that get the print book get the course, that's 4 people in the course. That one podcast was worth $4,000 to you. Going back to the $2,000 to $4,000 that we talked about, there's a system you can work with. Now, if it's lower than that, if you're on smaller podcasts, if you're on a podcast that's 1/10 of that size, meaning 10 people listen to it, that means that you're going to have about 1/4 of one person that's going to buy your course, which means that you'd have to go to essentially 3 podcasts that had 10 listeners to get one sale and have that $1,000. But again, it's all about the system. It's all about, do I need to be on 1 podcast a day, or do I need to be on 3 a day? most of the podcast booking agencies will tell you that about 3 a week is what most people can handle. With that said, I'm talkative. I know you haven't figured that out yet, 20 minutes into this, but you know, I wouldn't mind doing 3 to 5 to 10 of them a day. I am trying to develop my company to the point where all I do is just talk all day long about stuff like this, and just encourage people and help them share their stories, and have the rest of my crew and my system and all of that then take you the rest of the way down the road. I'm moving things to that. It's not just a dream; it is actually a plan that we have in motion. And so you need to look at those kind of things for you too. What are the things that you love doing that's part of the promotion of the book? What are the things that you can do that doesn't involve having to have to pay for ads? Ads work, but they also kind of don't, because you have to hone in that message to such an extent that people understand what you're giving them, so that they then want it. And then again, if you're doing it in an ad version and you're giving away the book for free, and then 20% of those are getting the print book and 20% of those are getting the course, you've got to look at what does it cost me to get 100 people that get the free book to be able to get those 4 sales. And that could be over the course of a month. Because again, $4,000 for your month would be a good month. So it's very, very doable. And some of you are saying, but my books I write, they're more fiction, they're more fun. Well, there is nothing more fun than meeting your favorite author. Seth Godin has a great saying. He said, better to have 100 raving fans than 10,000 people who could care less. Now, that may not be an exact quote, and I apologize, Seth, if I bastardized your quote, but I think it gets the point of what you were saying across and helps people understand. Having a community and feeding into that community and making them feel like an integral part of the next book that's coming out, and sharing with them behind the scenes of why did you do it. So let's take some of the most popular books in the world. Let's talk about Lord of the Rings. Okay, Lord of the Rings was huge when it came out in movies. It was actually obscure for a lot of years. And quite frankly, some of us that are huge Tolkien fans would probably be the first to tell you that, Tolkien was kind of stodgy. He was a, Oxford professor. And, if you would have had a talk with him about Lord of the Rings, if he would have done that, he didn't do those kind of things, but, if he would have had that be the group, quote unquote, course that he had, it had been a deep dive. It would have been like a university level course on, creating a new language like the languages that are created in that. Maybe you want to take a little bit more low end of an author as far as their academic capability. Stephen King once said about himself that he's like the Burger King of books. He may not be the best writer in the world, but he just puts out so many of them that he makes a lot of money. That's his quote about himself. I personally actually love his books, but if that's how he perceives himself, I'm not going to do the therapy session for him right here in this particular live. But the point being with that, again, is how cool would it be to get into a room, pay $5, $10, $50, $100 to get to be in a private Zoom session with Stephen King. I forget exactly how much it was, and somebody can again post, but I heard that the latest Taylor Swift concerts, the tickets were like upwards of $500 for just the regular basic tickets. That's what I heard. Now, I don't know anything about what I'm saying, so there may have been cheaper tickets, and they may have just been the person was reporting on how expensive some of the tickets were. But whether it was 10 VIP experiences or that was what everybody paid for it, that gives you an idea of just how much people will pay to just be in the presence of somebody that they consider to be a star. Now, when Katy Perry first started out, I found this very interesting. Obscure data that comes across my brain. Katy Perry actually started out as an opening act for Faith Hill and Tim McGraw. I had no idea. And it might not have been Katie, it might have been Taylor. It was one of the two of them. Um, and somebody will correct me on that, and that's fine if I'm wrong. But it's that kind of a thing. Imagine now, the person who was telling me actually said, they're like, Tim McGraw would totally be an opening act for her now. Oh, how things shift. But to be able to be an opening act for somebody that's pulling in that kind of thing, that's huge money and huge exposure for you. So where you are right now today, if you have one raving fan, if you have none, it's about leaking your stuff out there. It's about sharing it with the world. It's about creating intrigue. It's about having a group where people can all come together, having a community where you can begin to share, here's this cool thing that I came up with. This is the development of this character. One of the books that came out in July is the Runaway Silver series. Book 2 came out in July, Steve Whiskey Man. And I really have to look up what Steve's pen name is, but he was on the show. Again, you can go to Thriving Entrepreneur and look at the interview I did with Steve. One of the things that Steve's gotten in feedback from his audience is that the book is actually a little older. It skews a little bit older for the people that are interested in it than what the covers look like. The covers make it look a little bit more like it's in league with, Chronicles of Narnia, some of the early Harry Potter stuff. Harry Potter would even be kind of an outlier, a little bit older than that. But it looks like a children's chapter book, so it's full-sized book, but it looks like a children's book is what the cover makes you think. And he was getting some feedback from people that the cover was making them think that wasn't really the book they were looking for. And so they're going to update the covers with the next one. Book 3 is going to be out here pretty soon. And it's that kind of thing. It's about knowing your audience. It's about asking them, what did you like? What didn't you like? When they tell you what they didn't like, take that in. You want to get a free editor? I'm going to give you this mind-blowing way to get a free editor. Get a little group. Doesn't matter if it's 5 people or 5,000. Doesn't matter how big your group is. Get a little group. Leak your book to your 5 raving fans that are in your group. And tell them, I want your feedback. I want to know what parts of it you liked. I want to know what you... And please tell me, I know there's still some typos. I know there's some grammar errors in there. Please tell me all of the ones you find. I want to get it as close to absolutely letter perfect as I can. Perfect way to do it. Those people are not only going to be thrilled that they got your book, they're going to be very easy to ask to do a review of the book. They're going to brag to everybody about how they got to help with the book. And then they're going to share it with everybody in all their follower base. And again, if they only have 5 fans or 5 really close followers, it's 5 people you didn't know before. So how do you be a successful writer? 1, define success. 2, define how you're going to use the book after you define what success is. 3, take and figure out what is the best monetization strategy to go with that. So there's the marketing and the monetization. It's all kind of part of it. I kind of squeezed marketing and monetization into point 3 together this time. And then 4 is you've got to do it. You've got to start from 1 and build a group that's going to be able to help you reach that successful level of writing for what success as a writer means to you. And maybe success as a writer to you means I just want to write 100 books. I don't care if anybody ever reads them. I just want to be able to say I wrote 100 books. Maybe success to you means that you need to take 20 years to write your book. I don't know why anybody would do that, but I know some people that they just want to pour over maps and pour their whole entire heart, life, soul, and spirit into the book. That's okay if that's what your definition of success is. But I would follow that up with one more thing. When we're defining our definition of success, I'd like to encourage you to add this one more thing in there. Somebody's waiting on you. There's a person who would love to read your book. They can't read it till you release it. And after you release it, they can't get it if you don't tell the world about it. Well, that doesn't again mean you need to go out and buy ads. Do a Facebook post. What if you did one Facebook post every other day, or one LinkedIn post if it's a business book, or one Instagram, or do a TikTok? If your book skews that direction, do a TikTok of you reading 30 seconds to a minute of your book. and invite people to, and that word just jumped on my, and invite people to use your audio and do their own fun and silly acting out of what you were doing in the book. I'm thinking about doing that with one of my books right now. It would be fun to do that with Romeo and see what people would do with the parakeet that keeps dropping on his head if they came in and did their own acting out the things that Romeo's saying. We just might have to do that on TikTok. Somebody tell me if you like that. Always coming up with ideas, right? So anyway, it's about doing those things. It's about defining success and really then having all of those other steps for your marketing and monetization so that you then take action and do one little thing. I heard a great piece of advice yesterday. It's called the 1% method. Rather than trying to do everything you possibly could do, what's just 1%? What's one thing that you could do today on that particular goal? So if you want to sell 1 million books, what's one thing you could do today to lead towards just the selling of a book? And again, maybe it's as simple as just doing a post or a meme or something on Instagram or a tweet or a TikTok. What's the one thing you can do today? Make that 1% difference every day. Let those 1% pile up. Andrew Carnegie once said, I'd rather have the 1% of the efforts of 100 men than 100% of the efforts of myself. So figure out what's the 1% you can do and how can you get others to do 1% too. Until all of a sudden you feel the snowballs rolled down the hill enough that now it's becoming an avalanche in your life. And then you too can be a successful writer. I hope that helped. I know I droned on and on and on. Thanks for hanging with me, or stopping and starting and stopping and starting and coming back, or getting frustrated and just zooming to the end and hoping I had a point. Whichever it might have been, thanks for spending some time with me here today. I appreciate you. I hope you're happy, safe, warm, and loved. And then until we're together again next time, you have a great week.